Kavita seemed a bit disturbed. After hearing a couple of weird experiences, she said, "Know what? I was returning alone from the Dud Hai disco pub at around midnight yesterday. The elevator doors closed with a creaky sound, and the box lingered up at an ant's pace. Out of nowhere, a pungent odor enveloped me as if some gas had been released inside. I felt nauseated, and after an excruciating 6 minutes, I managed to reach the fourth floor."
Welcome back to SYWK Podcast, where no topic is off limits. Firstly, I would like to thank you for showing so much of love on my previous episode, where my guest Mr. Deepak, Topi, and myself spoke about the importance of healthy lifestyle for working professionals. If you haven't checked it out, please do. The link will be in my description. Coming back to this episode, you all know how much I love horror and how I am developing the interest in reading the Indian horror books. So that's why for today's episode, I have another author who has written a terrifying book called Scare Me If You Can. And trust me, guys, the author himself has narrated a few lines in the episode, and I got goosebumps while listening to it. The ending was unexpected. I challenge you all, you will not be able to expect such an horrifying ending. So listen till the end to enjoy his narration, to get to know more about his book. And if you are an aspiring writer, he has a special message for you. Now, I would like to introduce you to the author, Mr. Sid Kapdi. So, hi, Mr. Sid Kapdi. Welcome to my podcast channel, SYWK. It's an honor to get you on my show and talk about your book, which is Scare Me If You Can. Welcome, Mr. Sid.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is all mine. Thanks for having me over.
I am really excited, for today's episode and to have a chat with you because I was telling you before recording that, I'm a big fan of the horror genre, and I was searching, horror stories from India. And I got introduced to Jay Alani, then I got introduced to Mr. Neil De Silva as well. And Neil De Silva has played a major part in promoting a lot of authors like you, Mr. Abhishek. I'm getting to know more about all the Indian writers. So, first of all, thank you to Neil De Silva, and thank to you as well, of coming up with such an amazing book. When I was going through Facebook, I seen Mr. Neil De Silva's post, and that post was about your book, and I was very fascinated by looking at the cover of the book. That gave me that interest to find out
Right.
what is this book about. And the quote by Mr. Neil De Silva
Mhm.
on your book was something amazing. It was really interesting, and it will give me that urge of reading. So definitely, I am going to read. So, before we start and before our listeners can understand about the book, let us understand about you. Give us an introduction. Where are you from? Let us know something about you.
Sure. So I was born in Gujarat, and half of my schooling happened there, followed by Mumbai. I graduated in engineering and then followed it up the MBA. And since last 20 years, I've been working with the top MNCs in the IT industry. I've been reading novels and watching movies since childhood.
Hmm.
So that kind of built the base for my fiction writing, which obviously started as a hobby, and now I
Hmm.
am somewhere just above the amateur category, I would say, towards professional writing. Like any other guju, I love to travel, eat, and just have fun in whatever I do.
Oh, that is nice. That's really nice. Now, if you can tell us something about your book, tell us the top three things about your book, which will make a must read to our listeners.
Yeah, that's a good question. Something that I would like to go on and on talking about for this book.
Hmm.
So, coming to the top three things, right? The first thing that would kind of hit anyone is the overall setting of the stories.
Hmm.
So the concept is like this: there is a horror writing workshop with 9 participants at a spooky resort in Mahabaleshwar,
Okay.
and the resort itself is a source of eeriness. It gives the participants the thrills and the chills.
Hmm.
So each participant narrates a story based on his or her experience at the resort on the last day of the workshop, and session is called scare me if you can. So it's
Hmm.
about the participants trying to scare the other participants who are the listeners,
Yeah.
and then they are kind of graded based on the horror content that's there in their story.
Hmm.
So that's the premise. The second thing that's unique about the book is the horror quotient. It kind of keeps rising with each story. So
Oh.
it's like a game actually, where the difficulty level keeps going up as you progress.
Hmm.
And a lot of readers who have left their reviews on Amazon,
Hmm.
they have mentioned that it was their first horror book and they really enjoyed it, because they started with a very mild thriller story, which kind of is more of a starting
Hmm.
or a warm up for the
Hmm.
things to come, right?
Hmm.
And they enjoyed that. They went to the next one, and then the horror started building, and before they could really realize that they are into horror, it's already kind of late and they are already enjoying it and into the game. So I am also happy that a lot of hardcore horror fans and writers, they also have given their thumbs up to the book. So that was the second thing. And the third one is, as you mentioned, you are fond of Indian
Indian
horror,
horror.
right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so my stories are such that they are based in 10 different cities in India,
Hmm.
and each story has an element of the local flavor. So that is what makes the story a bit more authentic as compared to any other story, right? So
Hmm.
for example, I have been to a lot of places which are the backdrop of my stories. So
Hmm.
for example, Dalhousie and Khajiar and Kalatop in particular, where I
Hmm.
have a lot of scenes in the first story for the honeymoon couple. So that's one place I've been to a couple of years back. So all my experiences are kind of all in there as the backdrop. And then there is this killer ride story, which is basically a cab ride along the RA colony.
Hmm.
So RA colony is one
Quite
area through
famous.
which I
Yeah.
pass. Yeah, I pass by that to go to my office.
Hmm. Hmm.
So before the pandemic, I kind of used to go to office almost every day. So I used to traverse that path,
Hmm.
and then sometimes when I used to come back at night, it really felt scary at certain places where
Hmm.
especially the network was also not there and it was very dark. So I've used those elements and tried to build up the stories to make them look more authentic.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah.
That's quite interesting. The concept of the concept and the idea of your book is quite interesting. And I always ask all the authors, whoever I talk to, that these stories, whatever have you wrote, are they based on a true incident, or it is your imagination and it is your hard work that you have put in and you have written the stories?
Yeah, so in my case, the stories are not directly picked up from some incident, but yes, there are series of, and I'm a good observer. So
Hmm.
something happens, then it kind of, if it is something different, then it stays in the back of my mind. I kind of make note of that. So
Hmm.
a lot of such things are there in various situations within my stories, although none of them is kind of directly picked up or can be mapped one to one with certain incidents.
Hmm.
But yes, definitely the characters, the way of behavior, the talking, the style, lot of
Hmm.
those things come from the people I observe in my daily
Hmm.
life. And
Hmm.
in fact, that is why most of the stories that I have, they all
Hmm.
seem very something that would happen any day and it could happen to anyone. So they are
Ah,
very real. The horror piece just slowly builds up from somewhere and then takes it in a different direction. So that's how my
that
stories are.
that is nice. See, because what I feel is, if there is a true incident which has happened, so for a writer, already there is a whole story. But to think from start, from A to Z, you have to think, make characters, put the story, and then put the horror element. It takes a lot of hard work,
Yeah.
and definitely, I am going to read this book and try to get the chills like everyone else is having right now. So now I this is the fun part of my podcast. So if you can narrate or read few lines or pages from your book for our listeners. It will help us get connected to your stories, and it will help us, to understand this book in a much better way.
Okay, so I am on page 14, just in case anyone wants to refer back to it later on. So there is this, breakfast which is happening in the morning, prior to the daily workshop that I was talking about, right? The authors, or
Hmm.
rather the participants, are in for a workshop.
Hmm.
So one of them is Kavita. So I'll start here. Kavita seemed a bit disturbed. After hearing a couple of weird experiences, she said, "Know what? I was returning alone from the Dud Hai disco pub at around midnight yesterday. The elevator doors closed with a creaky sound, and the box lingered up at an ant's pace. Out of nowhere, a pungent odor enveloped me as if some gas had been released inside. I felt nauseated, and after an excruciating 6 minutes, I managed to reach the fourth floor. I was about to get into my nightgown when the middle aged farmer from the portrait painting on the wall ogled at me. I pulled a comforter over myself and lied motionless. When I woke up today, guess what I found? There was no portrait at all. The frame held a damn mirror instead.
My God.
Sivan and a couple of others sympathized with her. So this was one, and then there was another participant, Rocky. Rocky, taking a bite of his chili cheese toast, said, "We had a few scary moments too. After dinner, my wife Roma and I were taking a walk when her mobile beeped, and when she checked, it was our 12-year son Rohan's WhatsApp message. 'I am scared, mom,' it said. Roma immediately tried calling him, but could not connect. After a couple of message exchanges, she realized that Rohan, who had been left at her parents' house, was afraid due to a cockroach in the room. Roma called her parents, requesting them to take care of the issue. Our jaws dropped when we learned that Rohan had already gone to sleep a couple of hours earlier, and his mobile was in the custody of the senior couple. We kept getting messages from Rohan's phone, and in the middle of the night, we suddenly found large cockroaches all over our bed."
Oh my God, I'm getting goosebumps right now. Both the story, both the part was so amazing. The first one, I believe it was not a frame, it was a mirror, right?
Yeah, right.
Oh, that is something I cannot imagine. Amazing, amazing. Really, really nice. Really nice. Before we end, if any aspiring writer is watching this or listening to this, if you can give a message to them, it will help them as well.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, of course, I'm too young in this writing field at this point to give advices, but still, I'll try to give a couple of cents from my side. So, one is, you have to read, and read. I mean, there's no other option for you, right?
Hmm.
If you have to be a good writer, you need to read all kinds of genres, not just international bestsellers, but also one should read the Indian authors, especially the first time authors as well, who
Hmm.
are a lot of times writing very interesting stories, but they may not get the right exposure. But if the based on the synopsis and the cover, if the book looks interesting, then the aspiring writers should definitely give it a shot and look at what the other authors are kind of writing. So there's always a lot to learn from that. Secondly, one should plan not just on writing aspects but also on the post writing aspects, because writing is just, I would say, 25% of the job done, right? The rest 75% about how you are going to market it, how you are going to
Hmm.
kind of promote and sell the book.
Hmm.
All of that is more important as compared to the writing part, right? So
Yeah,
these
yeah.
days, you have to be alert, you have to be focused on how you are going to take the book forward after the writing part. So that's something you need to plan even before you start
You
writing.
start writing the book, yeah.
So yeah. And the third thing is, don't write for money. I mean, many aspiring writers feel that they are going to make millions after writing the book and all that, right? So it happens very rarely, and it is not something that's going to happen overnight, for
Yeah.
sure. So you should kind of be mentally prepared to actually spend rather than earn, at least in the first couple of books. And I'm talking about 99% of the cases. That's what happens. Of course, that doesn't mean that you should not write, or you should not dream big. But the point is to be the reality of life is that you really need to wait, and then gradually take it on. You can't just get overnight success so easily
Correct, yeah.
as one would dream.
Even I feel the same, this work hard, definitely
Yeah.
someday, somewhere you're going to get recognized. And since I started this podcast last in June, definitely whoever is listening, and even by now, even you must have known that I'm a big horror fan. And I am really, really interested in promoting and talking about the Indian horror stories. If there is a movie, if there is a book, if there is any podcast related to that, I'm really happy to promote it. And I really love and encourage everyone, to read and to listen to a lot of horror stuff, because the stories what we get from India is something different, and the touch is very, very different. So thank you, Mr. Sid, for coming on my podcast channel and talking about your book. I would request all my listeners to, go buy Mr. Sid's book from Amazon and give it a read and promote the local talent and promote the local artist from India. So thank you, Mr. Sid, for coming on my channel.
Thank you, Desmond, so much. And it was nice talking to you, and nice to know the passion that you have for Indian horror. I'm sure other aspiring authors as well as the upcoming authors will also benefit from you making them popular, and spreading the word around. So thanks so
Yes.
much, and
Thank you.
all the best for your channel, of course.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for listening, and see you guys next week with another episode. And remember, SYWK Podcast has only one rule, and that is no topic is off limits. Bye bye. See you. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.